Hello and welcome to my prediction video for the playoffs between Honduras and Australia. I want to start off by saying that it's pretty cool that we're getting such a random pairing like this, and that's really the beauty of soccer is that in the playoffs you can get two teams who have never met each other before, uh, and you can get some pretty interesting results. So, this one's a lot more difficult to predict than the New Zealand versus Peru playoff because the gap in quality here is much more narrower. And these are two sides with two very different styles of play in two very different venues. Only one of them is going to the World Cup. Both of them have to make some travels. And this one is hard to call, in my honest opinion. For Honduras, they got here because after a poor performance in the CONCACAF Gold Cup this year where they scored 0 goals, they've sort of been on the uptick lately in their last 3 or 4 qualifying games. They beat Mexico at home in their last match. They almost beat Costa Rica on the road, so they're starting to hit the right form at the right time, finally scoring goals under manager Jorge Luis Pinto. So this could come much to the dismay of the Australian team. I also think that for Australia, yeah, they're going to struggle greatly. I think in San Pedro Sula, just because I think when they fly all the way over there, and I heard rumors they're going to fly out there as early as a week before the match itself to acclimatize to the environment, which I think is a good call. A lot of Australian soccer fans think it's a bad idea, but I think it's a good call because getting there early and getting used to the environment is probably what's going to properly prepare Australia the most for this match. But it's going to be a culture shock. It's going to be a culture shock. It's going to be an atmosphere shock for the Australians because they come from a confederation that is a lot less hostile to play in than CONCACAF, specifically Central America. And keep in mind, no disrespect to Honduras as a nation, but San Pedro Sula is the most dangerous city in the Western Hemisphere. So I just think Australia, when they get there, it's just going to be a big slap in the face, it's a culture shock, in my opinion. I also think that Honduras' style of play, which is very physical, not hesitating to waste time and uh, fighting for the ball in a region where refereeing is pretty horrible. I mean, there's a running joke amongst CONCACAF folks that the worst referees in the world come from CONCACAF. Um, I also think that there's also a running joke in CONCACAF that nobody likes to play Honduras because of the fact that no one in CONCACAF really likes to play Honduras just because of the fact that it's such a hostile environment to play in. The absolutely buzzing atmosphere in the Estadio Catracho in San Pedro Sula. It's not a pleasant place to go and play for any team. Luckily, though, for Australia, they won't be doing it in sweltering conditions because it will be in November. It'll still be somewhat warm, but it won't be like playing Honduras in mid-July. That would be that would be really interesting to see. Honduras plays the first leg at home, so Australia does have the advantage of playing the second leg at home because that's pretty much what you want. But Australia has to travel more. They have to travel to San Pedro Sula and then back to Sydney. The good thing, though, that Australia is doing is they're arriving in Honduras a week in advance, which, again, like I said, I think is the right idea. And then for Australia, you have here's the thing: Australia should not be in this situation. They should not be in this situation. They are not the fifth best team in Asia. When Australia plays at its very best, I think they are the best team in Asia. If there's any team in the World Cup from Asia that I would trust to get results against bigger teams or European teams, I think Australia matches up better against them, certainly physically, more physically than teams like Japan or Thailand or South Korea. Just because, and this is just biology and genetics, a lot of Asian teams, stature wise, they don't stack up well against European sides because when soccer comes down to the whole physicality of the game, you know, Asian teams are not usually very good at defending set pieces and winning challenges on balls because of the fact that they are typically smaller in frame than some of the bigger European teams. But Australia is different. And I was impressed with Australia this summer at the Confederations Cup. I thought they should have gotten at least a draw against Germany. I thought they really could have gotten to the semifinals. They came one goal away from doing so. Trent Sainsbury really should have buried that second opportunity that came his way. Australia could have won that match against Chile. I thought they showed a lot of promising signs. They finished with 2 draws and 1 loss, which is a pretty respectable performance considering they were in a difficult group with Germany, Chile, and Cameroon. I think the only thing that's making me hesitant to go with Australia here is because of their current form. Uh, Ange Postecoglou is not a very good manager. They dropped points to Thailand away, and they almost dropped points at home in their last game. This is really the reason why Australia is in this situation in the first place, because they couldn't uh, take full advantage of lesser opposition. I have no reason to believe that Saudi Arabia, for example, is better than Australia because Australia defeated Saudi Arabia and they got a draw from them on the road, so they got 4 points from Australia. But they couldn't take care of business elsewhere, and that's why they're in this position. I refuse to believe Australia is outside the top 4 in Asia. I think right now, currently, they're probably the second best team in Asia. But I digress. They're in the situation. They shouldn't be in this situation. And they could very well be punished for it against a Honduran team that is hitting peak form at the moment. Having said all that, I do think Australia will be able to adapt to Honduras' physicality because they themselves are a physical team. They're a team that sort of reminds me of the United States. They do not have very many stars, but they rely on their collective being better than their parts. That's why Australia kind of reminds me of a second tier European side, maybe third tier European side. But I mean, they sort of remind me as like a lesser version of Ireland, and somewhere on the level of the United States as well. So this is difficult to call. Am I in the first leg in San Pedro Sula, assuming that's where they play? All I know is that the first leg is in Honduras. This is scoreline prediction for the first leg. I think I think it's gonna. It's tough. Ah, I think it's gonna be a draw because I think Australia is gonna approach this match very conservatively. They're gonna know that a point here will put them in very good position heading back home. I think they will, like I said, adapt to the conditions. And I just have a feeling that Honduras's struggle in front of goal, as they experienced earlier this summer, I think it's going to kick in here again, even though they got past it recently. I just have a feeling that Australia is going to hunker down and get the result they need. I'm going with a 0-0. Yeah, I make these predictions as objectively as possible. I don't allow any of my bias involved. I think this is going to be a 0-0. I think this is going to be a 0-0. And then the second leg in Sydney. Australia would have to be careful here because they get another draw. Let's say this draw ends like 1-1 or greater, then Honduras goes to the World Cup on number of goals scored. So what's my prediction for this leg? I think this match is going to... That's tough. I think I'm going to go with... I think I'm going to go with a 1-0 to Australia. And Australia... I think Aaron Moy will score. I think Australia will go to the World Cup. So Australia would go to the World Cup 1-0 on aggregate. and qualify for the World Cup. So thank you guys for watching. Leave a comment below, like, subscribe. I'll see you in my next video. Until then, much love and peace out.